Hello, I'm Kate Simpson from a new organisation called Together SA that's been formed by brave South Australians to promote a concept called collective impact. Collective impact is a giant co because it sets out to wrestle with the really complex social problems that many of us face. But I'm going to tell you a story of not co first, and it's one of those ones that has informed me professionally and personally for the rest of my life. So it's the early days in post-war Mozambique in the 90s, and people are literally emerging from the scrub naked. They don't have clothes, seeds or tools, they don't have health or access to water, and a bunch of brave, committed South Australians set out to design a response to this, to help. But the boreholes we dig the pumps can't reach them and break down. We can't get parts there because trading networks have fallen apart. Teachers and educators are hard to get there, and the community don't like the seeds or the storage techniques that local agriculturalists are using with them. We hadn't done the co, we hadn't taken the time people needed, nor had we really understood what they brought with them, and we didn't have the expertise we needed. So we slogged it out, and in spite of ourselves, eventually we pulled this project off. It was so tough that eventually my boss looked at me at one stage and said, we might have been better just opening a suitcase of $3 million and letting it blow around this community. And we all stood there and went, maybe. And I still ask myself that question in lots of the work I do. Are we at the point where the suitcase would have been better? And that's what co asks us, to go beyond our normal ways of working, particularly when we're working in very complex situations. So what makes great change? It's a combination of passion and discipline, and collective impact provides a framework for that. The passions, the commitment, the care, the staying there, the being vulnerable, and the discipline are the systems, the formal partnerships, the expertise, the accountability and responsibility that goes with that. So if we're going to move mountains, if we're going to work in really complex spaces, we need high levels of passion and discipline. And that situation, we didn't get it right. But what we find when we return to Australia, we work in equally complex situations. Many of us are working in Aboriginal health, childhood obesity, homelessness. None of these are tiny spaces. They're great big mountains. And most of us work around individual impact, where great intentions, but we know that no service, policy, or even large public service department is going to solve those complex problems. And in fact, what research has shown is that if we work collectively and align all of those activities, we're going to make a substantial difference, not just because the sum is greater than the parts, but because we're in a position to really analyse systems and advocate for meaningful change. So what does collective impact ask first? And to even step into a complicated space of high-level collaborations and co-production, we do need some new resources. We're realigning, but we need some new resources to pull it together. We also need a burning issue and inspired leadership. So that was a photo of me as an inspired leader, but I recognise that in this crowd. And then there are 5 conditions. We need a shared agenda, and we need a much more diverse group of people at the table than we currently do to solve complex problems in South Australia. So we need business, we need government, we need people with lived experience, and we need the community sector and the philanthropists. And we need to take the time to bring them together. So in the good examples that we look to internationally, it often takes 18 months to 2 years of developing those relationships and mutual understandings and stepping into risk together. We also need shared data, and this is a space where there's really interesting work in South Australia at the moment, but we've got a long way to go before we've got the data we need to really analyse problems and to be mutually accountable. And so this is one of the challenges that we're being asked, is how do we be accountable to the people we seek to benefit to each other? How do we go beyond upward accountability to sideways and down? Collective impact also asks us to align activities and to communicate continuously. And we've still got a lot to crack in that space. And the 5th condition is about a backbone that supports the work. And so Together SA is an organisation that hopes to provide some of that to complex bringing together of people to work in alignment. And the sorts of things that the backbone does is it facilitates those conversations, it holds us together, it mobilises resources, and it gets the public will in place. So a lived example of this, or a real example of this, Vibrant Communities in Canada isn't the only example, but you can see the scale they're working on. It's poverty reduction across 100 cities, and it works from the national level right down into neighbourhoods in those cities. And one example is the Hamilton Poverty Reduction Roundtable, where you've got 700 organisations working in alignment. This is almost beyond our imagination. And that alignment means that you have a very diverse group of players brought together under this single round table that has 10 business people, 10 government representatives, 10 people with lived experience of poverty, and 10 people providing services. Again, unusual. We don't usually weave those relationships and that real ability to hear each other over the years together continuously. What you see here is their continuous communication and really interesting platforms emerging to actually keep these groups together. And what changes is no longer a service-based response, but one that really analyses what's driving poverty, that can change the context both in terms of culture and policy. Now, a story that kind of summarises what has happened in Hamilton, this example, is their chair of their round table, this multidisciplinary team that's sticking with it for a decade, is the local newspaper editor. And so what's happened is the story's changed about what poverty is here. And when people there were asked, what would you prefer, government investment in poverty alleviation or a new stadium? 80% of the population voted for poverty alleviation. That's the power of collective impact. And we've actually got Liz Weaver, who leads that work in Canada, coming to South Australia in 2 weeks. So I'd like to invite you to come. Thank you.